Enzymes. People who eat less food live longer. You ever heard that? People who eat less food live longer. Actually, studies have been done on animals, not on humans. But there's no reason why the same thing would not apply to humans. And when you begin to study humans to nutrition and apply enzyme concepts to human physiology, it would work. The same thing applies. People who eat less live longer. We're going to find out why that is tonight. A few other things we want to talk about. Why is it that if we feed a calf pasteurized milk, its own mother's milk, milked daily, all we did was heat it up a bit using some heat to, why? Destroy the germs that might be harmful. And we're going to feed that calf its own mother's milk. Within 1 to 6 months, the calf will be dead. Why is that? Why is it that when I look at an x-ray of a lady that has osteoporosis or lack of calcium in the bones, and I say to her, do you realize you have osteoporosis? She says, yes. In fact, 10 years ago, the doctor took an x-ray looking for arthritis. And he told me no arthritis, however, the beginnings of osteoporosis are there. Is that right? Well, what have you been doing during that time? Well, I've been taking calcium tablets. I've been drinking milk like it's going out of style. I have been doing everything I can, eating lots of ice cream to try to get that calcium in there. That's interesting because now you have a worse case of osteoporosis, less calcium in the bones, and there's calcium deposits in the joints, arthritic spurs. Now, it seems to me if the body desperately needed that calcium inside the bone, it'd put it there instead of outside in the form of arthritic spurs. What about Eskimos who eat primarily animal products? Whale meat, whale blubber, and they have no incidence of cholesterol-related diseases. Talking about the Eskimos eating the traditional diet, not the modernized Eskimos now. Eat whale blubber. I mean, it's a saturated animal fat loaded with cholesterol, and yet they have no cholesterol problems or related problems, cardiovascular conditions whatsoever. How do you explain that? Can you explain why a cooked bean planted in the ground, in the earth, will not grow? I mean, all we did is apply a little heat to this bean. An uncooked one, unheated one, will certainly sprout, won't it? Put in the earth. Can you explain why adding some water, air, to an alfalfa seed and its nutritional content will increase some 300 to 800% increase in nutritional content simply by adding water, air, and some sunshine? Where did all that nutrition come from? Can we explain that? And why is it that the average American eating a good, well-balanced, all-American diet has got some serious health problems? You know, America has got one of the worst health pictures in the world. America has one of the worst health pictures in the world. Now, we are not aware of that in this country simply because we compare our health picture to other Americans who are just as sick as we are. See, we go to the doctor every year, and he says, he runs our annual physical, and he says, well, for your age, you're healthy. For your age, you see, qualified there. And we look around again at our fellow Americans, the same age group, and we see that they likewise have stiff joints and on a few medications, have had a few surgeries, and just a little more sluggish in the morning, getting up, and mid-afternoon the energy drops out, and we just assume that's normal. It's not normal, is it? What is it? It's common. It's common, but it's not normal. Why is it, though, that, again, Americans eating what we've been taught to eat? The scientists have told us this is a well-balanced diet. This has got all the nutrients you need in it. Why are we one of the sickest nations in the world? And that's by the admission of the American Medical Association and the World Health Organization. America is in the worst epidemic of chronic degenerative disease that mankind has ever known. Cancer, diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, the worst epidemic, in spite of the tremendous advances in health science since the 1900s. We know so much about this body. We've got a long ways to go, don't misunderstand. But it seems like the smarter we get, the sicker we get. So why is it? And we eat a lot of food in this country. And you look at some of the countries who, poor people, are not getting, a well-balanced diet. They hardly get, as far as quantity, they hardly get any food, and yet their health picture is much better. How do you explain that? We can look over in India, in the northwest side of India, in the Himalayan mountains. There's the Hunzakuts, or the Hunzas are also known as. A group of Indians there that have been well documented, probably the most studied culture in the world, because their health pictures, unbelievable. They'll live to be 100, 120 years of age, disease virtually unknown to them. And yet, as I alluded to a while ago, they don't have the advantages of all the wonderful, well-balanced meals that we have. And they don't have all the doctors and hospitals that we have, all the tremendous health care. How are we going to explain it? Well, the answer is enzymes. The answer to all those questions, enzymes. Enzymes, the most studied phenomena of the human body, of medical science. Enzymes. Starting in about the 30s, 1930s, there's been hundreds of studies done on enzymes. And yet, how many of you have really heard in much depth about enzymes? Well, you've heard the term, sure, digestive enzymes, or perhaps you've heard of an enzymatic reaction in the body. That's about it, isn't it? Heard much more than that? And I've got a little background in nutrition, in medicine. I've been through undergraduate work, majored in food chemistry and biochemistry. I went to chiropractic school, which you may or may not know is the same, first 3 years, the same curriculum as medical school, had all of 6 hours of nutrition there. Then through medical school and did the same thing again, got those 6 hours once more, and have read 1 or 2 books on nutrition. Read hundreds, I suppose, of books and articles on nutrition, and once in a while I'll see a hint of it. As far as I know, there are only 3 books out on that topic, enzymes, and their direct relationship to human health. Only 3. There may be more, but that's all I'm aware of. Now, you can pick up, again, bits and pieces here and there. You can go to the medical libraries and find studies, but that's not the core curriculum in medical education. Not at all. The only time that enzymes are mentioned in the medical curriculum is when it talks about a reaction in the body, and the connotation of an enzyme in the medical mind is that it is a chemical. It's not life. And we're going to draw a difference between those two concepts. It is life. Otherwise, it wouldn't react in the body. But again, just understand the concept. And I think most, not just medical doctors, but people just have the idea, well, an enzyme is kind of a chemical that does something in the body. No, an enzyme is far more than that. Far more than that. When I got out of school, I just want to explain how I got into nutrition. I want to explain how I became a quack, I guess is really what I want to do. When I got out of school, doing and began practice, doing what I was taught to do, I became very frustrated within a year. And it took me another year to decide to sell my practice and move on to a whole new profession. I was telling my pastor this story. He asked me one day how I got into nutrition. I told him I was just so frustrated because I was treating people, drugging them to their next disease, or treating them to their, just relieving the symptom. And I knew that wasn't health, but didn't know what the answer was. And I just honestly couldn't sleep at night. And I had a tough time taking money from people, because I knew that wasn't what they came to see me about. But that's all I knew to do. So he said, well, what would you decide to sell your practice? What were you going to do? I said, well, I applied to go to seminary. He said, you were very frustrated. So, well, while I was waiting after I sold my practice, I had about 6 months there, I was in limbo, and a lot of time on my hands. I just picked up some nutrition books and started reading. And some things began to click. Now, I had some background in nutrition that when I was in high school, and as a youngster, in fact, younger than that, my folks consulted with a nutritionist. And so there was some background, but no real understanding. It was just, I just did as Mom and Dad said to do. You understand the difference versus incorporating as part of my intellect and understanding. So there was a drawing towards nutrition. So I began to read and read and read. And some of the things began to click. And then I decided to get back into practice, only this time nutritionally. And let me tell you, it's quite rewarding. It's very rewarding. There's a satisfaction there. The only time patients don't get well now is when they choose not to. You know, it's not anything I've done wrong. It's when they choose not to. And so I can sleep at night. I'll tell you, when someone gets well, I don't take credit for that. You know why? Because when they don't get well, I don't want credit for that either. You know, that's their responsibility. Both ways. When they get well, they decide to take the responsibility. I was just a guide, a teacher. When they choose not to get well, that's their responsibility also. I can't take that. And that is really the basis of my practice and my message, that health is our individual responsibility. No one else can do that. Our job as individuals is to seek out health. And we really should all consult not a physician, but a doctor. There's a difference. The root word of doctor means teacher. And let's face it, a physician, which means healer, cannot heal anybody. Can't do it. Only the body can heal itself, given opportunity. And so a physician is going to try to heal your body. Well, all he's going to do is give a drug and make you feel a little better and make a payment on his Mercedes. But the doctor will act as a mirror to you to point out where you've gone astray, and then a guide, a teacher, this is what you need to do to get well. And then thirdly, hold you accountable, if he really cares. Hold you accountable to do that. What is an enzyme? Well, it's made of protein structure. By definition, an enzyme is a catalyst. A catalyst. Now, what's a catalyst? A catalyst is something that helps something work more efficiently. That's it. It's that simple. A catalyst helps something work more efficiently. Oil in the automobile engine. The engine does not run on oil. It runs on gasoline, correct? How efficient is that engine without the oil? Not efficient at all. Often chemical reactions are enhanced or they happen faster if heat is applied. Heat, in that case, becomes the catalyst. It helps that reaction go through faster. And that's what enzymes are. They are catalysts that help various metabolic functions in the body take place. In fact, every metabolic function in the body, every chemical reaction, in other words, that keeps us alive, keeps us healthy, is run by, is supervised by, is helped by a catalyst or an enzyme. So they seem to be fairly important. I sort of get that impression. You may or may not know that vitamins, all vitamins are enzymes. Now, not all enzymes are vitamins. Okay? So we have vitamins, which are the more common enzymes, and there's a whole other group of enzymes that you can't buy in the bottle. And we'll get into that in a minute. Without enzymes, there is no life. There is no life without enzymes. Impossible. They are the basic workhorse of life. Now, man may one day truly begin to understand what an enzyme is and the life aspect of it. That's something they've yet to figure out. But I promise you, they'll never be able to reproduce the life in that enzyme. Never. I believe that's something that God did when He breathed breath into Adam and life into Adam. When He set this universe in motion. That's the living quality of this universe, is an enzyme. I'm talking about on a physical level now. So man will never, in my opinion, be able to reproduce it. He may one day begin to understand it, but not reproduce it. That's an important point. We're going to come back to that. Just to know that we cannot make life. Everybody wants a pill for every ill. They want health to come out of a bottle. Let me tell you, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You've got to have life in that bottle if there's going to be any help in there. You've got to have life enzymes in that bottle. One time a mother consulted with me. Actually, she was in for herself, and she had her baby in her arms, and this baby the eyes were just oozing with all kinds of mucus and coughing, and it was about a 6-month-old child, and I said, "What's going on there?" And so she said, "Well, this child's been doing this from almost day one of life, and she has not begun to crawl. With 6 months of age, they normally do, and the baby doesn't even turn over, which they do that about 3-4 months, somewhere in there." And she said, and there's no expression on her face, and you could not elicit any kind of reaction from her face. And I said, "Well, is she retarded?" She said, "No, they've had all that testing done. The doctors think that it's allergies." That's a nice cop-out word we doctors like to use. We don't know what else it is. Oh, it's an allergy, right? And I said, "What are you feeding that child?" She said, "Oh, formula, because I work. I've got to feed that baby somehow." I said, "I'll tell you something. I've yet to see a child on formula that doesn't have this problem. Maybe not to this degree. In fact, this is the worst case of this I've seen. But I've yet to see a child on formula that doesn't exhibit some sort of mucous membrane symptom. Ear infections, sinusitis, asthma, bronchitis, something." I said, "It's that formula." She said, "Well, what do I do? I can't breastfeed." Beyond that, I said, "Well, get some goat's milk, live goat's milk. In other words, unpasteurized, fresh goat's milk. And it's a little bit more potent than mother's milk as far as protein, so add some water, dilute it a bit, see what happens." Well, I went overseas for a month, and when I came back, she called me up. She said, "It's no change." I said, "Did you get the goat's milk?" "No, I didn't." "Well, don't call me then. Get the goat's milk." A week later, she called me. She said, "I cannot believe it." "What?" "I got the goat's milk." "And?" She said, the mucus discharge is almost gone. I mean, I hardly know it's there. The baby is crawling. 1 week. And we have a baby with personality now. 1 week. The child's pediatrician wrote me a letter. "How dare you steal my patient," was he said it in more professional terms, though. And I wrote him back a nice, tactful letter. I said, I didn't. I just made some advice. I wasn't trying to take the patient. And the rest of his letter had to do with, what's this goat's milk nonsense? And formula is the way to go. And I said, this is one of those mysteries that medical science has yet to explain. I said, I cannot explain to you what it is about the live enzymes in the goat's milk that make the difference in the health of a body. I said, I've just observed that in my practice. Left it at that. When I use that word live versus, say, a dead enzyme, or denatured would be another way to say dead, when milk is pasteurized, they'll run a test on it to see if it's been properly pasteurized. And that's called an enzymatic activity test. Enzymatic activity test. And if there's any enzyme activity, then that milk has not been properly pasteurized. So it's enzymatically inactive. Now, we're going to refer that to as dead. See, there's enzymes there, but they're not active anymore. They won't react to the testing. So we're going to call it denatured or dead, but it's enzymatically inactive is the correct scientific term for that. If you haven't got the impression by now, enzymes are rather important. They're rather important as far as this body running and staying healthy and alive. And we have said that there's no metabolic function that takes place unless those enzymes are there. Some functions can take place without the enzymes, but very, very inefficiently. And most reactions just will not happen. Most chemical functions will not take place at all without the enzyme. So they have to be present. There are many different types of enzymes in the body. They figure that there are over 100,000 different types, and some say way beyond that. Some enzymes are in storage for long times. The body makes them way ahead of time and keeps them in storage. Other enzymes are made the instant they're needed. I think those would be rather hard to isolate. But there are enzymes that are specific for the heart, specific for kidneys, specific for just any part of the body, and then you get into that heart and you go into the cells, and you find that there are many hundreds of thousands of different enzymes within the cell, the many different functions of that cell. It's a very complex subject. We're going to call these metabolic enzymes or body enzymes. All right, the enzymes that are in the body that are specific for the various glands and organs that the body uses to run itself on, to carry out the metabolic functions that keep us alive. We're going to refer to those as body enzymes. All right, everybody got it? Body enzymes. Metabolic enzymes, another way to say that. The body makes these. The body makes this. You won't find them in food. There's no outside source. The body manufactures these metabolic enzymes. Now, our body, every day that it's alive, will burn enzymes. Uses them to carry out life. Those have to be replaced. So how can the body make something alive out of nothing? It's got to have a living source of what I'm trying to get across. It's got to have a living source, an outside source, to make it alive. Those live enzymes that come in from an outside source, it's going to convert those to the various body or metabolic enzymes. Now, what did the metabolic enzymes do? Yes? They ran the body, right? All right. So we're going to find some outside source of enzymes, live enzymes, or generic enzymes, you might say. See, the enzymes that run the heart and the kidneys and the brain, you won't find anywhere. I mentioned that. You won't find them anywhere outside the body. So we've got to have some sort of raw enzyme or generic enzyme that we're going to take in from an outside source that the body can then convert to its own unique brand of body enzyme, whether it be heart, kidney, brain, whatever it is. What do you suppose the source of these generic enzymes might be? Food. Well, what kind of food? Let's get more specific. Alive food. Another word for that is raw food. Raw food. Now, I didn't say raw fruits and vegetables. That's probably what most people were thinking when they heard the word raw. Oh boy, here we go. Raw fruits and... No, any food that's raw has live enzymes in it. That would include raw meat. Now, I'm not telling you to eat that. I'm just saying that it has live enzymes in it. Our body cannot take something inorganic, the new word, inorganic, or dead, or enzymatically inactive, something denatured, such as dirt, and convert that to something alive. I mean, children try to live on dirt. Doesn't work too long, does it? If our body had the ability to take something inorganic, something enzymatically dead, or something void of enzymes, then we could live off dirt. Now, we need a live source coming in to the body, which we're going to take those live enzymes and convert them into enzymes that our body can use. These enzymes that come from food, raw food, we're going to term food enzymes. They're also known as plant enzymes. So we've got two broad categories of enzymes. What are they? I forgot. Can you tell me? All right, metabolic or body enzymes, and then food enzymes, also known as plant enzymes. All right, very simple. Two forms of enzymes. The body enzymes are made by the body, but we have to have a raw source to make those from. We have to have a generic source, which is the plant enzymes. So it becomes very simple. Every day that we live, we burn up the body enzymes. Those have to be replenished. That's supposed to come from an outside source, raw foods. Simple? All right. Now let's speak a bit about disease and enzymes. What do you think would be the consequence if I deprive my body of plant or food enzymes? What if I ate food that didn't have enzymes in them? What would be the consequence of that? Well, obviously, the big picture would be the word dis-ease. dis-ease. Because the body, without a full bank account, is going to have to start cutting back on some expenses. Doesn't have enough enzymes, enough money coming in every day to run as efficiently as it'd like to pay all the bills that it'd like to. But life goes on. They have to be paid. If the enzymes are not available, if for some reason we're eating foods that don't have those enzymes, then how does the body stay alive? Now, it wasn't until I really began to grasp the concept of enzymes that a question that I'd always had was answered for me. And that question was, how can a baby who comes out of mother's womb be fed formula, something that's enzymatically inactive, denatured, grow? Now, I didn't say it was healthy, because I've yet to see one. But how could it grow when it was dead food coming in? Well, you see, when we're born, we have quite a bank account of enzymes available in this body. And so when we take in this partially inorganic food, it's not inorganic in the terms of a biochemist would define it. Inorganic means there's no carbon atoms present. This has carbon atoms. Our body has the capability to take this. It's still dead, in my opinion. It's denatured. The enzymes are not there. They're not active. And the body can take that and pull enzymes out of its own system and convert that food into live food. Tremendous cost to us. Why? Because every day that takes place, we're not putting back into the bank account. So we used enzymes just to stay alive that day, right? Just the various metabolic process kept us alive, number one. Number two, we used a lot of enzymes to convert that dead food into live food so that we could grow and stay alive. I didn't say healthy. Now, what's going to happen if I keep doing that? Well, what happens when your bank account is starting to run low, or your income, let's say it that way, is reduced? You have a certain amount of bills and obligations financially. What do? How do you cope? How do you stay afloat? Well, what you do is you begin to reduce the payments, if you have that option. You don't make the full payment, or you make the minimal payment. Some things you'll put off, if possible. Some things you'll just let go. See, somehow that it's going to balance out to stay solvent, right? Same with our body. If there's not enough enzymes coming in daily, it begins to cut back on various metabolic functions. It will slow them down. It will reduce tremendously their efficiency. Just for example, the liver and its ability to clean house. Here's this little baby eating this formula that's pulling a lot of enzymes out of the body. The liver is not getting its fair share of enzymes to do its daily house cleaning of the body. So what does it do? It says, sinus membranes, you're going to have to deal with some of these waste products. You kick them out. And so the mucous membranes become the dumping ground, something they were never designed to do. And of course we have this very thick mucousy discharge. And the bacteria love that. Boy, they move right in there because this is now weakened tissue. It has toxic debris for them to feed on, and they move in. Now, our mentality that we've been taught with, traditional medical approach is, the bacteria moved in and attacked this body and we got an infection. No. And you can pick up any medical text on infectious diseases and you'll find out that two things have to be true before an infection can take place. Number one, the tissue where the infection takes place must first be weakened by something other than the bug. If that weren't true, we'd all be dead a long time ago. Because I promise you, we can culture anybody's throat in this room and find at least 10 disease-producing bacteria. Strep, staph, TB, most people have. Why don't you have those? Well, fortunately, your throat is strong enough to resist right now. Okay, so that's number one. The tissue must first be weakened by something other than the bug. And we have that situation right there. These waste products hitting those mucous membranes will cause them to be in a weakened state. What's the second condition that has to be true before a bacteria virus can move in and set up housekeeping and create what we call an infection? That is that there must be food for the bacteria, the germ, to feed on. What do they feed on? They're all scavengers. Healthy tissue offers them nothing for food. They feed on toxic waste byproducts. Don't we have the perfect breeding ground for an infection in this situation? We have this toxic byproduct that's hitting the mucous membranes, weakening them, and this excess matter there. Bacteria love it. They move right in. So we rush little Johnny off to the doctor. Antibiotic kills the germ. Symptom clears up for a few days, maybe a week or two if he's lucky, and then it's back. Why? Because the condition is still present to allow that to happen. You go back to the doctor, more antibiotics. You see it? You know about those. You've got kids. You've got grandkids. You know what I'm talking about. All right? So here's a situation where the body said, liver, I'm sorry, there's not enough enzymes to go around. You're not going to get your fair share today. So you're going to have to find some other way to clean house. The liver says, the only other way I know is called vicarious elimination. Mucous membranes, here you go. You deal with it. Otherwise, the body just begins to slow down. Don't have as much energy. The joints are a little stiffer than they used to be. See? That's the state of dis-ease that we have associated with normal aging in this country. Not at all. Our body was never designed to age. And scientists will tell you that. They've taken cells in laboratories and fed them the proper nutrition, removed the waste products, and kept them alive virtually indefinitely, and without any sign of aging or dis-ease. And they say, we don't understand what happens in the human body versus in the lab. Well, it's very obvious. They feed those little cells in the lab the right food. Live food. And the Hunsakuts I mentioned earlier, and there are other cultures who bear this out, who eat foods with enzymes. They don't know disease. They'll work virtually till the day they die. They just sort of keel over one day, fall asleep die in their sleep. That's how it's supposed to be. No matter what disease you want to name, if you want to, or if you want to talk about vitamin deficiencies or mineral deficiencies or whatever, one thing is always true. You can always count on one thing that's wrong. What do you think it is? A lack of enzymes in that tissue or that system that's sick. Always. Now, there may be a mineral deficiency there too, but for sure, there's an enzyme deficiency. Dr. Howell, who did the most to promote the study of enzymes, he was a medical doctor in this country starting in the 30s. He died not too long ago. He was responsible for gathering just all these hundreds of studies from around the world on enzymes. And he had a clinic where he would bring people in and change their diet, and many wonderful things happen through change of diet. But he saw some tremendous things happen with a disease that's the number one killer of children in this country, and that's leukemia. Now, his theory was this. The white blood cells what do they do for the body? House cleaning, right? Right? Part of the immune system. They clean up things that should not be in the bloodstream and the tissues. So he had run across some research that was done in the late 1800s by a medical doctor who would monitor people's blood, and he found out that people who ate primarily cooked foods had a higher than normal white blood cell count. Higher than normal, not in the range of infection necessarily, but just higher than normal. People who ate only cooked food. And he found that if they left off the cooked foods for 48 hours, their white blood cell count would drop to normal. And so Dr. Howell got looking at that research, and he got thinking, now why would the body run the white blood cells up when they eat cooked food? If we put into the body a food that is void of adequate nutrition, void of enzymes, in other words, and we have a body that's run down and depleted of enzymes, that food does not get thoroughly digested. See, when the bank account of enzymes goes down, our digestive system is no exception. It also is going to be lowered on its fair share of enzymes. Digestive enzymes are part of the enzyme bank account. You know, when I say our body makes enzymes, what were those called? Metabolic enzymes. Remember that? When our body makes metabolic or body enzymes, heart enzymes, kidney, part of that group is digestive enzymes. Now, so if there's not enough to go around, not enough enzymes to feed the heart like they're supposed to, or not enough to feed the kidneys and so on, the digestive system doesn't get its fair share either. So here comes this food, and it doesn't get thoroughly digested. It's broken down to molecules that are small enough to absorb, get into the bloodstream, but not small enough to be utilized. It needs some more digesting. What's the body going to do? So white blood cells? Sorry, I know this is not your job. But as far as we're concerned, this is a foreign substance. It could be a carrot. But it's not in small enough molecules to be used. And so the white blood cells are increased in numbers to go attack that foreign invader. Cooked food. And he said, all right, in leukemia, we have a very high white blood cell count. I wonder what that might mean. You don't suppose it means that those bodies are so low on enzymes that their normal channels of house cleaning, the liver and the kidneys and the skin and the normal enzymes that take care of house cleaning just cannot do it. And so the body says, white blood cells, you're our only hope. And so the white blood cell count just keeps rising and keeps rising and keeps rising. And with it comes a fever, one of the classic symptoms of leukemia. And what's the fever? It's always the body kicking in the metabolism at a higher rate to hurry up the process. So he said, if that's true, then if I were to deprive people of food for a time, or fast them, we should see some results. Because if I deprive them of food, their body's not going to have to don't have to expend any enzymes, any nutrition or energy digesting and processing food. That's going to free up a tremendous amount of energy and enzymes to do what? Finish up house cleaning. And sure enough, he was very, very successful at his work with leukemia, amongst other conditions. And then, of course, he'd follow up with live foods to pay back the bank account and restore and maintain health. How do we deprive the body of enzymes? Well, we eat foods that are not raw. We eat foods that are not raw. Foods that don't contain enzymes. Well, which foods don't have enzymes? I mean, I thought they all did. Pasteurized milk has enzymes, yes, but they're inactive. What happened? Why were they rendered inactive? What was done to those enzymes? Heat. If you apply heat above 112 degrees Fahrenheit, most enzymes are rendered inactive or denatured or dead. And so here's this milk that was milked from the cow. We heated it up to kill the germs, fed it to that cow's offspring, and within 1 month the calf dies. Why? It didn't have enough enzymes in reserve to convert that dead milk into life. It just burned out its bank accounts, and that's it. So what foods don't have enzymes? We said heat, but in a general term you could say foods that have been processed. Foods that have been in some way processed. There are several ways to process food and thus denature enzymes. Heat is the one that's most common. Heat is most commonly applied to most foods we consume, either before we get it and or after we get it. We'll heat it up before we consume it. Chemicals that are added to foods can also render enzymes inactive. Oxygen. If you expose enzymes to oxygen, that'll destroy them. If you've ever taken a bite of an apple and leave it sit on the counter, what becomes of that apple? What does it look like? It starts turning brown, doesn't it? That's the result of oxidation, which is the oxygen attaching itself to the enzyme and rendering it inactive. And then radiation is another one. There's a big push for irradiated foods. Yeah, it's interesting that 12 other countries have outlawed irradiation because they tried it out and figured out the food is dead. And not only that, but the irradiation actually creates some harmful byproducts in that food. But now we're getting off to politics, and I better not. Okay, Let me tell you about the Pottinger cats. Dr. Pottinger, as a medical doctor back in the 40s, wanted to know what processed foods or cooked foods, processed foods, do to the body. How would that affect our health? Now, you need to know that Dr. Pottinger was not a health nut. He didn't know what he's going to come up with. Number two, his research he financed by himself. That's very important to know. No one told him what results to come up with. And what he did, he divided cats into 5 groups. And the first 2 groups he fed raw food. And they remained healthy throughout the experiment. And we're talking about 900 cats that he observed over several generations. The other 3 groups he fed processed foods, cooked food. Here's what he noted. The first generation cats, processed food cats now, developed diseases near the end of their lifespan. Things like we commonly experience today as humans. Cancers, diabetes, flus, allergies, those type of things. The second generation, I like to call them junk food cats, developed those same diseases in the middle of their lifespan. The third generation cats, when do you think they developed those diseases? Early. They were either born with some disease or within a matter of weeks or days sometimes. Many of them were deformed. I've seen that he recorded all this on movies. And you know, a cat, if you hold it upside down and drop it, it has a righting reflex. It'll flip over and land on all fours. And they didn't have that. They wouldn't play. They wouldn't fight. He also, when the experiments were finished, he took pictures of the pens where he kept them. And it was dirt floors. And the pens where they had the processed food cats, there was nothing growing. The foods that had the raw food cats, all kinds of foliage growing in there. Very fertile ground. Interesting. Now, in this country today, we are finding children who have old folks' diseases. That was something that was unheard of in the early 1900s when our diet was about 75% raw or 75% unprocessed, let's say it that way. Today it's just the other way around. In fact, the average American will go 7 to 14 days today without eating any raw fruits or vegetables. 7 to 14 days. The average American, a family of 4, do you know what they spent last year on raw produce per week? Family of 4, what was the bill for 4 people per week on raw produce? $1.74. Now in this country, as I said, we have children now who have chronic degenerative diseases. In other words, as if they've lived a lifetime of depleting their body of enzymes and nutrition. They have it as children. Some are born with diabetes. Some are born with hypoglycemia. Arthritis, something called juvenile arthritis. You ever heard that term? That's a relatively new disease. All it is the old folks' arthritis that's now in children, so they had to rename it. It's not a new disease. It's just that children now have juvenile diabetes. That's another fairly new disease. The number 1 killer of children in this country, under 10, cancer. That is also a degenerative disease. You have to be mighty sick for a long time, run down for a long time to get cancer. Not anymore, because each generation, the enzyme pool is less and less in that newborn. There's less in there. There's less in the bank account. It takes less wrongdoing, therefore, for the problems to manifest. That's what we're saying. Pottinger also found that the third generation cats could not conceive. They either didn't conceive or they aborted it if they did get pregnant. And right now in America, 25% of young adults are sterile, cannot conceive. It's the worst it's ever been. Spontaneous abortions are on the rise. Miscarriages, in other words. Tremendously on the rise. All right, and if you look at the statistics of what we're consuming today versus 1900, it becomes very obvious. We're eating foods that are just totally devoid of any live qualities, any enzymes, in other words. Never mind vitamins, never mind minerals, never mind whatever, all right? Now you can take this milk that's been pasteurized to a chemist and say, what's wrong with this milk? I fed it to the calf and he died. And the chemist will analyze it, and he'll say, well, it's got glucose in there, it's got water and protein, it's got the fatty acids, it's got vitamins and minerals, it's fine. Well, then that's everything the calf needs, right? Yeah, as far as basic nutrients. However, he said there's one thing missing. What was it? I talked about it. Enzymes. I said a few things about enzymes. That's all that's missing. Now, in an empirical scientific mind, if all those basic ingredients are there, it's food. But from our viewpoint, it's not food in that it's not readily available for the body's use because it's not alive. That calf couldn't use it, could it? Calf died. As soon as it depleted its own bank account, what it was born with, it died. Now, we can live up to 70 years without enzymes. I mean, without replenishing our enzyme. Our daily burning of enzymes, our daily expenditure of enzymes, we don't have to replace those. We can do that for about 70 years. Say, so, well, why bother to eat live food, raw food then? The issue is not how long we're going to live. The issue is the quality of that life. You see, aging and disease is the result of what? The lack of enzymes. And so if we put in the food that has those enzymes on a daily basis, replenish the bank account, then we don't have to deal with disease. Let's just look at something called the hierarchy of food preparation. What we're talking about here is what we're doing to our food. And know that the more that we do to food, the less value is left in it. I find it very interesting that the more money and intelligence, if you want to call it that, that is applied to food preparation, the less value is left in that food. The less money and intelligence applied to that food prior to eating it, the more value it has. We've educated ourselves into illness. The food that is the most alive, has the most enzymes available for us, what form would that be? Raw. All right? The next one on the list is juiced and consumed when it's still fresh. Juiced. What you buy in the health food store, the grocery store, that's been juiced. However, it's been pasteurized. That's their method of preserving it. So the enzymes have been rendered inactive there. So there's no life in that. The next one on the list, dried or dehydrated. What percentage of enzymes are going to lose when we dry or dehydrate food or juice? 2 to 5%, somewhere in that neighborhood. All right? And that's assuming that we haven't used any chemicals with it, or the heat has not gone above 112 degrees. It's going to remain quite enzymatically active, only 2 to 5% loss. Frozen. We freeze something raw. It'll lose between 5 and 30%, depending on the food. Steamed, 15 to 60%. Now, that's steamed means that the green bean is still a little bit crispy. If the green bean is limp, that's cooked. All right, we want it steamed, still a bit crunchy. Cooked, between 40% loss all the way up to 100% loss of life. When you cook a food and you see all that steam going up, that's all the life going up, and it's on your ceilings. You lick your ceilings and your kitchen wall if you want real food there. Now the microwave, that becomes a real heartache to people when I talk to them about that. The microwave cooks not by heat. It cooks in a mechanical way. The microwaves bombarding the molecules in the food cause them to start vibrating as they strike each other. The molecules within that food, they create friction and thus heat, and that it cooks that way. But this vibration process, unfortunately, causes the enzymes to split away from the molecules they're attached to. So if you have calcium as found in the earth, it's inorganic or dead calcium. The plant kingdom then will take that calcium and attach to it an enzyme. That's something the human body cannot do. As we mentioned earlier, children attempt to do that when they eat dirt, but it just doesn't happen. Only the plant kingdom has that ability. All right, attaches the enzyme to that calcium molecule. That renders that calcium alive or enzymatically active, organic. When you heat the food, when it exposes the microwaves, when you put chemicals, that enzyme is either detached or just rendered inactive, denatured. It's not usable. And the microwave will detach it. There was it happened right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was written up in medical journals. A patient was needing a blood transfusion, and they were in a big hurry. And normally the blood is heated before it's given to the patient, so the nurse stuck it in the microwave to heat it up. The patient died. Family sued the hospital, and the family lost. Was not malpractice or negligence. Why? Simply because that was unknown knowledge, that microwaves would be harmful to life. Okay, now, if it does that to blood, why wouldn't it do that to food? And I have read in medical journals where pediatricians say, don't heat the baby's food in a microwave. Don't heat their milk. They don't say why. They don't understand why. They just found it has a difference in how it affects that child's health. So that's the hierarchy of food. The more we do to it, the less value in it. And you think about the average American diet, way down there in the scale, isn't it? Way down there. What are some of the ways that denaturing foods affect us more specifically? As we talked in general, we deplete our enzyme bank account and the body just begins to wind down and slow down. But what are some more specific ways? Let's begin with digestion. Most Americans have a digestive problem. We do some testing here in the clinic, and there's virtually every patient, without exception. I just assume the patient has digestive problems when they come to see me. I just do some testing to find out how bad it is and what foods they don't digest. All right, but the average person digests only anywhere between 70 and it can go as low as only 30% of what they eat. That's not unusual. And I tell the patient they've got digestive problems. They say, no, I don't. I say, well, it seems to me that the fact you pop 10 Tums a day should say something. Well, I just do that. Well, when they get feeling better, they say, you were right. I just lived with a certain amount of indigestion all the time, assumed that was just normal. Been there so long. How does eating denatured foods or foods that are low in enzymes affect the digestive system? Let me explain how digestion is supposed to work. I think you'll be surprised. When you eat a carrot, raw carrot now, our stomach will send out some enzymes, not many, small amount, which will activate the enzymes in the carrot. And those enzymes in the carrot will basically digest that carrot. The carrot, with a little help from our digestive system, digests itself. Once that carrot is finished digesting, those plant enzymes, remember that word, that term, plant enzymes, there's some left over. They weren't all used up digesting that carrot. They're absorbed into the body as generic enzymes. And the body's going to do what with those? Convert them to metabolic or body enzymes, right? And carry on with life. Part of those, we're going to go back to the stomach to replenish the bank account for digesting that carrot. See the system? It's nice, isn't it? All right. Now, what if we cook the carrot? And it's limp. And there's no enzymes left. Our body is saddled with the entire job of digesting that carrot. It's going to expend a lot more enzymes, and there's no payback. All right? So you do that month after month, year after year. Now when you eat, there's just not enough enzymes available to digest the food thoroughly. Never mind run the body efficiently. You ever heard that there's no difference between sugar and fruit and sugar on the table? In one sense, there's not. Once either of those sugars is in the bloodstream, they're identical. They're both glucose. But there's a difference coming into the body. A great deal of difference. You see, the sugar in fruit, the sugar in vegetables has with it enzymes. Vitamins, minerals, enzymes attached with it. Those enzymes get into the body along with the sugar, and they help the body convert that glucose into energy. Remember, every metabolic process requires enzymes for it to happen. To convert calories or sugar to energy, that takes enzymes. There's about 10 different steps, 10 different enzymes utilized to convert that sugar to energy. If we refine the sugar, in other words, all that's in the sugar bowl is sugar, sucrose. There's no enzymes, there's no vitamins, put that in the body, it gets in the cell, and the cell says, great, got some sugar, but I need some enzymes to convert this to energy. Where's it going to get those enzymes? It's going to borrow them. And our body can do that. It's amazing how the borrowing that goes on, the bartering and borrowing that goes on with enzymes. Hey, Here's a heart cell. Hey, bones, I need some enzymes. Well, you borrowed some yesterday. I haven't seen those returned. Well, I promise you this idiot's going to wake up tomorrow and realize he's been wrong. And he'll start eating live food again. I'll pay it back tomorrow. But you don't need those enzymes as badly as I do. Talking to the bones now. See, the bones, they can afford to give up more. I didn't say that they were designed to. So the bones fork over some of these enzymes, and they run up to the heart to help the heart stay alive. Now, when we start this borrowing business, the bones are not going to send the heart all the heart needs. They're going to send it enough to keep it alive, but not necessarily healthy. In other words, if you're living in debt, living on borrowed money, all you do is put food on the table. You don't remodel the home. And so the body just slowly starts going downhill. All right. Now, because the bones have such a vast supply, we don't miss it for about 60 years. We go to the doctor one day, and he's 65 years old, and he says, "You have osteoporosis." Well, Doc, where'd that come from? Don't know. I tell you where it came from. That started 60 years ago. Slowly robbing. Every day, a little bit every day. So when we eat sugar, white refined flour, foods that are void of enzymes and vitamins, that's what we're doing. We're causing our body to borrow from itself to keep us alive and ultimately creating disease. I mentioned calcium a while ago, live calcium, or the minerals. Acid-alkaline balance of the body. In Guyton's Physiology, which is the physiology textbook of medical schools, Guyton makes a statement in there. The acid-alkaline balance is the most significant phenomena of human physiology. What we're talking about, there's the mineral balance in the body. The minerals. Our body, we've been talking about enzymes, but it uses minerals also to carry out various metabolic processes. But the only way the body can use those minerals is if what? They have enzymes attached to them. They are live minerals. Not the type found in the earth, the inorganic. The organic only coming through the plant kingdom. And every day we live, we use minerals two ways. One, we use them to replace the structure, like we replace cells in the body. Part of the structure of cells is minerals. And we use them in the various metabolic processes. So we're burning up the minerals. Now those have to be replaced, correct? Outside source. But if we're eating food that's void of organic minerals or live minerals or enzymatically active minerals, how are we going to stay alive? How are we going to deal with that lack of mineral coming in? Well, again, we borrow. We borrow from ourselves. We rob Peter to pay Paul. And what happens is that the cells of the body give up their alkaline minerals. The organic minerals are called alkaline minerals. Our blood has a pH slightly alkaline. pH is 7.4. Now 7 is neutral, right down the middle. And you go on to the left of 7, or get lesser number, down to 1, that's acid. And you go higher than that in alkaline. So you have an acid, like hydrochloric acid, vinegar is acid, or soap is alkaline. Now our blood likes a pH of slightly alkaline, 7.4. And it's very particular about that, because that pH drops just a little bit acid, 7.2. It's not even acid. It's not below 7. But 7.2 will die. When it gets that little change, all the red blood cells stick together. We don't carry oxygen. It's called acidosis, and we die. So obviously our body is going to be pretty particular about keeping that blood at 7.4. Now the way it does it is through these organic minerals I've been talking about. They are alkaline in nature. And so we need to take in every day these alkaline minerals to keep our blood at 7.4. Why do we have to take them in? Well, because we burn minerals every day in staying alive. We've got to replenish the system. Now, food that has been processed, that's enzymatically dead, the minerals in that food are now what? Are they alkaline or are they acid? They're acid. Now here's the picture. You've got a swimming pool, and you're going to keep the pool alkaline, somewhere between 7 and 8 in pH. And every day that pool lives, it's going to become a little more acid. just from the evaporation and the water circulating through the filter and so on. It's going to become slightly acid. So what are you going to do at the end of the day to keep it alkaline? You're going to add some alkaline, sure. Here's our body. It runs slightly in the alkaline department. That's where it's healthy. And every day we live, we burn those alkaline minerals. We should be replacing them, do we? The average American goes 7 to 14 days without eating any alkaline whatsoever. Now, you don't have to be a chemist to figure out that if I'm burning minerals every day, alkaline minerals, I'm burning those up, just staying alive, and instead of replacing that, I do what? Come home at the end of the day and I check the pool. Yes, it's more acid than it was this morning, and then I put in all these dead inorganic acid foods. What's that pH of that pool going to do? All right, use another analogy. Let's say you want to keep the water slightly warm. And as the day goes on, it starts to cool down. At the end of the day, you should be pouring in warm water, right? Instead, you pour in cold water. What's the temperature of the water going to be eventually? And cold. Well, how about this body? If we burn the alkaline, living, enzymatically active minerals, and we put in dead minerals every day, or acid ones, what's the pH of the blood going to do? It's going to go acid. You know what? It doesn't. It doesn't. You can go to the doctor and have it checked. I promise you it's 7.4. You're sitting here. Okay? So how does the body do that? I've already told you the answer. It borrows, sure. Pulls those minerals out of our tissue. Takes them out of the bones, the muscles, the ligaments. That's the first place it'll pull them from. And why? Because those are the least vital tissues for our survival. And that's why as we get older, eating an acid, toxic American diet, the skin begins to lose its tone, the muscles start to sag, the joints get kind of stiff and achy, the bones lose their mineral content, osteoporosis. Enzymatically dead food, minerals. How about weight problems? Some of you have had the experience to say, I've cut calories, I just can't get rid of that weight. It doesn't make sense. Well, there are two types of calories. There's live calories and dead calories. I talked about sugar a while ago. That's what I was referring to. There's sugar that has the enzymes and the minerals that are live with it, and there's the sugar that has been those calories or sugar that's been dead, been cooked or processed in some way. Now, when those calories come in, it's our body's responsibility to convert calories to energy. That's why we eat calories, glucose and carbohydrates, for energy. But if there's not enzymes attached to that, then our body has to go looking for enzymes from its own tissue. And obviously, it's not going to borrow all that it can, because it's got to think about tomorrow. And so it'll borrow enough to convert some of those calories into energy, enough for survival that day, and the rest it says, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to convert these to fat. That's the best we can do under the circumstances. This is the dead calories. And so it converts some to energy and some to fat. So the person is tired and they're fat. That's the result of that. They can even cut back calories, as I said. Now, to burn fat cells or get rid of them, you know what it takes? Enzymes. It takes enzymes. And if you reduce the calories of a dead diet, you're still not feeding the body enzymes, right? Right? You just cut back. Same diet, just reduce the calories. So where are the enzymes to burn the fat cells? They're not there. And so the fat doesn't come off. That can be frustrating for people. All they have to do is start eating live foods. And don't have to count calories. Just eat all the fruit and vegetables they want that are raw, and drink juice, and things begin to happen. Cholesterol. Talked about the Eskimos. You know what our scientists found out? They went up to find out why these Eskimos don't have cholesterol problems, yet they eat, as I said, animal products, whale blubber. You can't find a more saturated cholesterol-loaded fat. What was the answer? They ate it raw. It had the enzymes in it to help our body break that fat down and put it to good use. But you heat a fat, the enzymes are destroyed. Our body cannot produce those enzymes. We don't have the ability. And so that fat is denatured, unusable, and the body just sticks it inside the arteries. That's the best it can do with it. And other major problems they're finding out with fat. The buzzword, the dirty word, has been cholesterol, hasn't it? Watch cholesterol. And so America has reduced cholesterol intake by 75% since 1940, and yet we have more cholesterol-related problems today per capita than we did in 1940. What have we replaced cholesterol with? Well, we've gone to vegetable oils and corn oils, right, safflower oils. What do you think is wrong with those? They've all been heated. The issue is not whether it's cholesterol-free or cholesterol-loaded. The issue is, has it been heated? I don't care what kind of fat or oil it is. If heat has been applied before it gets in your mouth, it's going to be sticky in the arteries. Now, there's an interesting sideline here is that you see, to the empirical scientific mind, they say, watching cholesterol, don't eat nuts, don't eat avocados. Why? All they see is fat. What they don't understand, that's raw fat, assuming it's raw nuts. In fact, that'll help you reduce your cholesterol level because it has enzymes in it to help us break down the fat and get it out of the system. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Well, we've already addressed that in that when we heat food, we destroy the enzymes that help us use and put to use the minerals and the various vitamins. Now, what Americans want to do is they want to go to the health food store or the drug store and buy a bottle of vitamins and take care of those deficiencies. And I'll tell you, there are very, very few companies that understand the concept of live food, live vitamins, live minerals. Very few. You can take enough vitamins, these inorganic vitamins that have been processed, and they say, oh, they're natural. You see, the FDA allows them to put natural in the label as long as that vitamin originally came from the earth. Well, I can label my telephone natural. It's plastic. It originally came from the earth, right? Right? It has nothing. The word natural has nothing to do with how alive it is. It has to do with its original source. So you can, once you get it from the earth, you can do whatever you want to it and call it natural. As I said, there are very few companies that understand the concept of live foods that process their vitamins under 112 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's a lot more expensive process. It takes more time and effort. So you can't go by the labels. There's just you have to do some research with the company and ask questions. And of course they'll all say they're natural. Okay, but I want to know how they are processed. What happens from the time you pick the plant until it gets in the bottle? That's the issue. Now, if you take enough of these dead minerals and vitamin supplements, you'll feel better. Sure you will. You know why? You take 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C every hour, you'll feel wonderful. I'll save you a lot of money. Drink a cup of coffee about every 3 hours. You'll feel just as good. And for the same reason. You see, 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C is very stimulatory because it's way out of proportion, out of balance for the body. It's actually a foreign substance as far as our body is concerned because it's not alive. Vitamin C equals ascorbic acid, right? Is that what you've heard? You read on the label, the back says ascorbic acid. The government allows them to equate those two. They are not the same. Ascorbic acid is one part of the vitamin C complex. There are 9 parts of the vitamin C complex. And ascorbic acid is the outer layer of that. It keeps oxygen from destroying the inside, the real part of vitamin C. Now, we do use that ascorbic acid. But when our body's a vitamin C deficiency, it's the whole complex. Now, we put in ascorbic acid, and 90% of ascorbic acid in this country is made, you know how? They take sulfuric acid and corn syrup, mix them together. You've got ascorbic acid. That's enzymatically dead. It's not alive, and it's very stimulatory. Why? Because the foreign substance. And in those high concentrations, how many milligrams of vitamin C in an orange? 15, 20, 25. I think green pepper is the most of any food. It's up to 50. 50 milligrams of vitamin. That's it in one food. How many green peppers could you sit down and eat in one sitting? I don't know, maybe 3, maybe 4. But so there's 200 milligrams. That's perhaps all our body can handle one shot. Because it's not just one particular ingredient. It's the whole complex. It's the live food that it wants. And so when we take dead food, concentrate it, a dead ingredient, for example, the body looks at that as a foreign invader, and it'll speed up the metabolism, and boy, you feel good. but it's not health. And ask a big vitamin taker. When you start taking these vitamins, did they make you feel better? Oh, yes, tremendously. I say, okay, so if they satisfied your deficiencies, then you should be able to reduce the amount. Has that been true? Well, actually, I've had to keep changing brands and increasing amounts to feel as good as I felt last year. Oh, maybe they're not doing for you what you think they're doing. So we want to make sure those vitamins are truly natural, organic, alive. And then free radical pathology. Well, that's a new buzzword. I think this is probably the best thing that ever happened to medical science in discovering free radical pathology. How many of you have heard that term, just the term? You may not understand what it is. Okay. Because this is going to, I believe, going to be the bridge between medical science and nutritional science. Nutritional science is, we're talking about it tonight. Because the only answer to free radical pathology is live food. There's no other way to get the enzymes to stop free radical pathology. It has to come from one source. They can't make it in a laboratory. The drug companies are pulling their hair out, or I think they're going to, when they figure out that they can't make it. In a nutshell, free radical pathology is this. You put something into the body that should never have been there in the first place. It can be anything from air pollutant to a chemical in our food to X-ray, and even some of our normal metabolic byproducts, processes, produce what we're going to call imbalanced molecules. They're missing an electron. And you know what these imbalanced molecules do? They'll rob an electron from one of our good healthy cells. That imbalances that cell. And that cell wants to grab one from somebody else so it can be whole. And everybody just keeps grabbing. And they keep doing that, and the thing just starts winding down. It's called free radical pathology. Now, in normal, healthy situation, person eating the proper diet, they're living like they're supposed to, our normal metabolism makes free radicals. But our proper diet with live enzymes in it, there's enough in there to kill those free radicals right now before they do any damage. In our day and age, not only are we eating foods that are void of any enzymes to kill these free radicals, and those enzymes, by the way, are called antioxidants. That's all they are, is enzymes. There's about 6 different enzymes that are known as antioxidants. Not only is our food void of these enzymes, these antioxidants, but we're putting in all kinds of chemicals which create even more of these free radicals. And as I said, medical science has figured out that any degenerative disease, every degenerative disease, cancer, arthritis, diabetes, and so on, all free radical pathology. That's the root of it. And there's only one way to stop it. Isn't that great? It's enzymes. And so they're going to have to look over to eating live food for an answer. So what's the answer to health? Last year, more Americans sought alternate health care than traditional health care in this country. That's the first time that's happened. That's exciting. More Americans sought alternate health care approaches to their health problems than they did traditional health care. Americans are beginning to wake up. They're figuring out that taking a drug is not the answer. Now, I'm all for drugs when it comes to saving lives, crisis care, and surgery, those type of things when it's a matter of life. But where I have a problem with traditional medicine is that once the patient's life is stabilized, we say, here, you'll need to take this the rest of your life, pat you on the back, and off you go. Instead of saying, okay, now that we have your attention. You got a little scared with that heart attack, didn't you? Yeah. Well, now that we have your attention, let me explain to you how you got in this mess and what you can do to reverse some of the damage, perhaps all of it, and prevent future problems. And Americans are beginning to figure out that when they take a drug, all they're doing is suppressing the symptom only to develop another disease down the road. And it makes sense. We don't get sick because of drug deficiency. There is no such thing. If you have a headache and you take an aspirin, the headache goes away. Is your headache caused from an aspirin deficiency? No, I don't think so. There's no such thing. we have yet to figure out that when our body gives us a symptom, a headache, a pain, or ache, or whatever it is, that our body's trying to say, hey, idiot, I'm not designed to feel this way if you're treating me right. I'm doing this to try to get your attention. To telling you you're doing something wrong. And if you keep doing it, it's not going to be a headache, it's going to be cancer. It's going to be emphysema, it's going to be arthritis. But instead we say, boy, this silly headache of mine. Go to the doctor, take a drug, and keep suppressing it. Now, the worst thing, the saddest thing about drug therapy is that the patient gets relief. You sadist. Well, the sad thing is that the patient goes home feeling better, and they're not provoked to think that maybe I did something wrong to create this problem. And so they carry on in the same lifestyle that gave them the headache, only to create cancer later on down the road. You see? So they take the drug for this symptom, it goes away. 2 years later, 6 months later, go back to the doctor, different symptom. In my mind, it's not a different disease. It's a different manifestation of the same problem, depleting the body of enzymes and nutrition. Now, I can't close here until I've told you about some other products that are very dear to me. My ongoing burden is to get the message of health out to people. I hope that was been obvious tonight. But I would rather teach than practice any day. I enjoy being with people and seeing them feel better, but I just enjoy teaching and spreading that message. And so as I've traveled around the country over the last 8 years speaking and listening to the questions and the concerns that people have, I began to develop some products, materials. I'm not selling vitamins. Materials, tapes, and booklets to leave with people so they can begin to help themselves, because no one else can take the responsibility of their health and immune. And so I just want to mention some of these products that we have. Probably the best one is this Juicing for Health. I mean, juicing is very popular right now. There's a number of books on the market. Every store now is selling juicers. This book, Juicing for Health, is the best book on the market on juicing. I know that because I know the author. But that's a good book. Tell you everything you want to know in a very concise form about juicing. We have the Eating for Slimness program. This is actually a health-producing program. I mean, you want to get well. You want to lose weight, get healthy. The weight will come off. And so this is just a little more strict regime of the normal dietary program we prescribe in this clinic. But it's actually not a weight loss program. I don't like to tell people that, but it's a getting healthy program, and the weight falls off with that. Pregnancy, childbirth, and children's diet. You may be past time of life to bear children. However, you have maybe some grandchildren on the way. So this talks about how to prepare for that child before conception and while mother's carrying it, and then what she should be eating. And, one of the biggest fears that people have in eating the way we've been describing, because we tend to lean away from animal products. I'm not a vegetarian, but, I don't have a problem with eating meat. I think once every 4 or 5 years, I think that's plenty. Have a piece of meat. But people worry about that those poor little children are not going to have bones and muscles if the mother doesn't eat some meat and dairy, something like that. So that explains a bit about that. Then health through nutrition. Now, we've touched on some subjects tonight like citric acid cycle. We talked about acid-alkaline balance. We talked about the hierarchy of food preparation and so on. This is a lot more detail on why food and how food affects our health. That's what the health through nutrition. Got a manual and tape version. And then the second set on that, the follow-up set rather, Eating for Health and Wellness, gives the do's and don'ts of how to apply this new way of eating. And then my best love is the attitudes in health. And I feel that the key to health is really in our attitudes. You say, well, it sounds like it's what we eat. Yeah, but you've got to make a change of attitude if you're going to change your diet. You may change your diet for a little while, but if you don't change the attitude, you're not going to stay with it. And you can even eat right, totally, perfectly. But if you have a lousy attitude, you will not get well. It's just that simple. So on that that seminar, we talked about what medical science is finding out about the connection between our mind and our body. We've always known that, but now the evidence is there, the mechanism, the connection